Okay, my clock says it's the top of the hour now, so I think we can get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon for our first QuickBase customer webinar, Leading Change: How IT Manager Eric Alter Strengthens Stakeholder Relationships with His QuickBase Applications, featuring the New York foundling right in New York City. I'm Keith Dugas. I'm an account manager here at QuickBase. In my role, I have the ability to see hundreds of QuickBase applications, and I'm excited about this webinar series as a way for our customers to showcase unique and powerful solutions that they're able to create, molding QuickBase their unique processes. I'm excited that today Eric Alter will have the opportunity to share with us his success. Eric brought QuickBase to New York Foundling in an effort to improve their program's performance by finding a more efficient way to collect and deliver data to key stakeholders in his network. Today we'll give you a quick overview of the New York Foundling case study, then I'll go into how QuickBase has helped them address their issues. Then I'll turn it over to Eric, who's going to give us some color to their story, what brought them to QuickBase, and then he'll show us one of his key apps that he uses to manage the program at New York Foundling. Eric is someone we refer to as a hero here at QuickBase. This term comes from Forrester Research and refers to a highly empowered, resourceful operative. A hero is someone who takes initiative to solve business challenges using technology. Many of you in attendance today, I think we would consider to be QuickBase heroes as well. Today we're here to hear from Eric Alter and discuss the application he created over at New York Foundling for the evidence-based programs and preventative services. Eric has 13 active QuickBase applications supporting 8 programs and 300 users. New York Foundling is a 100-plus-year-old foster care and preventative care services organization serving all 5 boroughs of New York City and Puerto Rico. So you have an overview of what we're going to be covering today. We'll have a brief case study from the QuickBase use at New York Foundling. Then we'll spend most of our time hearing from Eric and looking at his application. Then we'll finish with some live Q&A. So please submit your questions one of 2 ways. There's a chat box labeled Q&A at the bottom right of your screen. You can enter questions at any time. And also you could tweet at us with the hashtag QuickBase and at our Twitter handle at IntuitQuickBase. The theme we'd like to cover tonight is strengthening relationships by getting the right data to the right people at the right time. Eric is going to go into this in more detail, but here is the overview of their case study. Within the evidence-based group, the biggest challenge was getting status updates on patients to the right people at the right times. In the past, that data was delayed with disparate systems and manual spreadsheet reporting. The solution was having a centralized online application that Eric was able to build to match their unique process and make it easy for entering data from the field and automating the delivery of reports to the key stakeholders. Here's the impact that they've seen so far. They've reduced the time spent on data by 60%. They've increased the number of clients that they're able to support by 66%. And they've saved over $500,000 with the efficiency that they were able to create. Now, at this point, Eric, I'd love to turn it over to you, and you could share with us your story of what brought you to QuickBase, the key stakeholders in your network, and how QuickBase brought them all together.
Thank you so much, Keith. Welcome, everybody. Great to be here. Keith, you did a pretty good job of giving the overview. I don't know how much I can add to it, but I'll definitely try. As you mentioned, the New York Foundling is primarily a foster care agency that's been here since for over 100 years. In the last 50 years or so, aside from doing foster care, we also got into preventative therapeutic work with an awful lot of our youth that we deal with here in New York. These mostly came to us through government agencies and contracts just on different kids that were having all kinds of different sorts of problems. And as a result, these government agencies did all have databases where we were required to put in information, aside from demographic information, also how often we were seeing these families and these kids who were in need of assistance. As Keith had mentioned, the problem is that there was an awful lot of delay in between the time the data went in and then we got the information back. Also, too, these agencies weren't necessarily tracking on the things that we wanted to track on. So there was a need to create some other kind of database solution. We did what an awful lot of people usually do. We start out with spreadsheets, keeping everything there. You reach a point eventually where that simply isn't going to work anymore. We then try going to Microsoft Access. A problem with that is that in-house it would work great, but we needed something that was out in the field, and I'll explain why that became necessary. So we actually go into a specific program. At that point, then I started looking something else. We needed something besides Access, so I started looking at all the various online databases that were out there, as cloud computing became a very sexy term around here. And I was looking at some of QuickBase's competitors. You all know who they are. Cisco had something. There was Zohos, and there was all kinds of other things. And all of them, including QuickBase, were basically designed around either one of two things in mind, either some kind of customer relation management, CRM, or project management, which certainly makes sense for all these companies. They are for-profit companies, and you have to have a product that you think you're going to sell the most. None of them really worked for me. What made QuickBase different, though, is that while they had all those templates, you can do things from scratch. You can make an application look exactly the way you want it, which is what I wound up doing. I had all these spreadsheets, I had all these Access databases, and they were easily imported into QuickBase, so I was able to hit the ground running. And maybe we'll get something up. Let's go now. Yeah, Keith has up here, perfect timing, Keith. Basically a workflow slide and how we have things set up. So government basically contracts us to provide therapeutic services to different families with different youth who have different therapeutic needs. And in the past, what they always do, they always emailed us all the information. Can you take this case? Can you take that case? And there was all kinds of records. If the youth had been arrested, a probation report, a staff psychiatrist, a mental health report, and these were all emailed to us. And once we took a client, it was always a treasure hunt to try and find any of these. QuickBase here cleared that up, which we'll get to in a little bit. Now, the way it works is the government, which we'll show you later, they actually enter the information into QuickBase. And again, we'll get into that more details. But once we have the information, a therapist will go out and meet with the family, determine what kind of therapeutic model they need, and then come back and enter into the various databases required, not just QuickBase, but the government databases, the information we saw this family on this day for this amount of time. And then once that's entered, then we can do things like create progress reports. In other words, all the supervisors know when a therapist has seen a family. We're also able to create reports, send out to the government agencies because they like to know, well, we've contract with you. How are you doing with these families? And we send them regularly reports, which are instantly created, or instantly generated, I should say, in QuickBase. And also, too, there are a couple of programs that are not funded by the government, but are funded by private agencies and want us to work with families and youth in trouble. And in those cases, those reports go out to the private agencies. And that's basically the overall workflow. Now I'd like to, Keith has a slide up. It shows some of the many different applications which represent a lot of different programs at New York Foundling where we do use QuickBase. I've just gotten actually some direction. There's two more where you have to add and two more programs that are coming down. But the first one that we have, Keith has circled there, is called Blue Sky. It was like the first evidence-based program that we did here at New York Foundling. And what that basically does is that it was discovered a number of years ago that when you arrest an adolescent and put him in a juvenile facility, within 3 years, that youth is going to get arrested again. So the whole idea of incarceration as a rehabilitation statistically proved it just didn't work. Locking kids up didn't work. So we decided that, well, let's try with some of these kids, instead of locking them up, working with the entire family, giving therapy to the family, keep the family unit together. Because we discovered that's the key to keeping these kids from getting rearrested. So that was the first group we did with Blue Sky, and as I mentioned, and that comes through the government. Basically, what happens here in New York, if a teenager gets arrested, he goes before family court, and there's all kinds. The main government agencies called the Administration for Children's Services, ACS. They'll look at the case after having the kid being examined, determine should this kid go to juvenile facility, and for certainly some of the more serious crimes they do, or would this person be a good candidate for therapy in the home for the Blue Sky program? If they decide they will, this next screen up, this is the actual QuickBase form where the government agent will enter all the information. As you can see, this is pretty much standard demographic information: name, address, ethnicity, race, phone numbers, things like that. You can see perhaps towards the bottom there's some place about some government information, and there's actually a spot where instead of emailing all these government ordered documents, they actually upload them. As you know, you can keep documents there, which is one of the other great things about QuickBase. As I mentioned earlier, there was always a treasure hunt. Well, who has the probation report for this kid? You had it emailed last. You have it. You have to look. It's in this spreadsheet. It's on this server. This way, there's no treasure hunt. If you're looking for the probation report for Mary Jones, it's in the Mary Jones file in QuickBase. You always know where to go. That saved us so much time. You know, one-stop shopping, so to speak. So they enter that. Can you go back to that previous slide for just a second there, Keith? Thank you so much. Once they enter it in, another great thing about QuickBase are those notifications and emails. I have it set up. As soon as the government agent puts this in, it sends an email out to all the appropriate people at New York Foundling saying, hey, you have a new prospect. Does somebody need to look at whether or not we want to consider them? And if we do, once the judge says yes, the government agency can go back in here, mark the case as active, and another notification goes out that says the judge said okay for this, so now we know to go out and contact the family and see them. You can go to the next slide now, Keith. Thanks. So once we have that notification, we start seeing them, we can then start entering what we call contacts when the therapist does see the family. Keith, can you...
sorry about that, Eric.
There we go. Okay, yes. So it says add contact. We call it a contact because sometimes it's by phone, sometimes it's face-to-face. Usually because this is a relational database, up there where it says name, that's automatically populated because you start out from the client page and go add a contact. It can default to today's contact. You put in the start time, end time. It tells you how long it is. It even defaults. You can see my name is in there as the default therapist who's actually entering notes. Freeform text box where we type in what happened during the session. Type of contact, subtype, those are things that just help us classify whether it was a face-to-face or a phone contact, and whether or not it was therapy done with a family, or sometimes a therapist will meet with somebody's probation officer or their high school principal or a football coach or something, and there's a way you can classify all that. And it's just the standard format, and everybody enters it the same way, so you can really do some comparisons, A/B comparisons between the different programs and how they're doing on entering contacts and how often people are seen. The next thing, Um, Yeah, so once we have all the contacts in there, we can then, as I mentioned before, run reports. This is a report that can go to the supervisors within New York Foundling, or it can even perhaps go, if appropriate, to one of the government agencies or private funders. This happens. We've obviously taken out the therapist names and the clients' names for privacy's sake, but here's a case of all the contacts that were made last week by everybody in this program, and we can look and see how many are done, of what type, um, and whether, more importantly, whether something was missing or not. That's the one thing we did discover, and this tracks it in real time. I should say that right away. In other words, as soon as somebody's entered it, it's there on QuickBase, you run a report, it's on the current data. We're not waiting 3 or 4 days from some government report and have it go into SQL and then being put in Crystal reports and then finally sent to you. I even know one database, I won't mention any names, another agency where if you wanted to have a specialized report, you had to put in a request and it'll come up with you for a couple of days. I, no exaggeration, have things where my boss will come to me and will use an extreme, will say something, will show me all the blue-eyed Hispanic females under the age of 17 who got arrested while we were treating them in the last 6 months. And I can literally put that, because the data's there, I could put that report together in about a minute and send it off to them. That's one thing the government agencies marveled at when they were getting the reports. Every once in a while, they would ask for something out of the ordinary, and they were just blown away when it's like, I'll have it for you in an hour or two, to the point where some of the government agencies we deal with, obviously, when we run a program dealing with juveniles who've been arrested, the other agencies are also in the program. Once they saw the reports from New York Foundling, a couple of the agencies actually set something up, brought all the other agencies in and go, I want all you other agencies to seriously consider using QuickBase so you can give us reports like this. The next thing, yes, this is a very, very powerful report, what we call the face-to-face contact report. It's not just the say the contacts that were made last week, but I've created, because it's a relational database, you have summary fields, you have lookup fields. So for any given client, if you look at this closely, we can see when's the last time there was a face-to-face contact, how many days has it been, the average number of days between sessions, because there are certain requirements in the care model that the first month you have to see the family 1 or 2 days per week, and we can figure that out. If you just even look at that slide, the very first line, it shows that while it's been on the day we ran this report, it's been 5 days since that first family was seen. They're seeing the family once every 7 days, once a week. This current month, this therapist has seen this family 3 times. All right, and so on and so forth. That looks great. But if you look at the second line, the last time they saw that family was 2/27, and it's been 20 days since they've seen that family. That's almost 3 weeks. That's way too long. It allows us to ask the question of, why has it been 20 days? I don't know who you are, where city you might have been calling from, but we've all had the unpleasant task of reading in our local paper where some child perhaps died under foster care, and it turns out that the local social services agency hadn't visited the family in months. It's a tragic thing. It breaks my heart when I read it. That cannot happen here, because as soon as the supervisor sees it's been 20 days, we start asking the question, why has it been 20 days? And just as a tiny little tangent, it's not always because, in fact, it's very rarely because you have a lazy social worker. Usually it's something like the family refuses to see the therapist, or they're just not answering the door because they've got something to hide or something. But at least it brings it to our attention that there's something wrong that we need to address right away. As a result, we've had, nobody in any of these programs we've never had a situation where somebody, a child had died or was in serious harm while they're under care of somebody we're servicing. In a very real sense, I know some people see this as a stretch because of this report and because of QuickBase. QuickBase does save families' lives because we stay on top of things with this report. The data is real. It's right there. We check it. In fact, the next slide will probably show you, because we have all these reports, and QuickBase also has the ability to create subscriptions where a report will automatically go out every Monday, every Tuesday. And this will show you in this Blue Sky program for the clients table, that's just one table. You can see there's, if you look at the bottom, subscription number 81, we have 81 different reports, probably more that go out. The program director for all the evidence-based programs here at New York Foundling, who gets reports from all the different programs. Literally every Monday, she gets about 200 emails from QuickBase on just how things are doing. When's the last time this kid was seen? How many, contacts were made? That's an extreme example. Dr. Rollins is a data freak, and she loves getting those 200 emails. And you certainly don't have to do that, but you can see you don't blank for information so long as you've got things set up and people are putting in data, and then you can keep track of what's happening with your program. Or if you're in the business of selling widgets of some kind, you can keep track of how many widgets were sold yesterday or the week before, or whatever else. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Basically, because we have all this data, all the supervisors and program directors can really make well-informed decisions because they have all this data, whether we need to add more therapists, we can reduce the number of therapists. As it says here in the slide, the government agencies and foundations, they get all the reports. They know how well we're doing with their money when it comes right down to it. All the therapists have a standard way to record their work. The form is the same for everybody, so it's not like one therapist is entering information this way and one therapist is entering in another way. It's all very standard. It's just made us all efficient all the way around. We were able to increase the number of therapists, the number of clients that each therapist was seeing to the point where, as it says here, about 66%, we're able to increase our capacity for doing that. Let me just, before we go even on to the next slide, Keith, just mention something I read yesterday. There was a big article in the Times about big data analytics and how that's a very sexy term now among the Internet. Well, this is big data analytics. We're taking all this data and we're figuring out, are we doing a good job with this family? Is this therapist doing a good job if they're seeing enough people? Are we doing what we promised to do? It's the ultimate quality control. And it just basically made us more efficient. I don't know what else I can add. Keith, did I forget anything? Is there anything else we wanted to touch base on? I think that was pretty much it.
No, Eric, sounds great. I'm not muted, right? Can you hear me, Eric?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for sharing your story and your application with us. I really can see the value you're getting from it, and it's great to hear what you were able to put together there. And I think it's a great story, too, of how you were able to tie together the different stakeholders in your network and improve the flow of data from therapists all the way up to everybody who needed that information. Now we'd love to take some questions from the audience today, and please submit questions in the chat box at the bottom right of your screen. Enter them at any time, and you can also submit questions by tweeting at us with #QuickBase. And Eric, while we're kind of going through some of the questions here, how long did it take you to put together your first application when you came to QuickBase?
Oh, well, as I mentioned, I had a whole bunch of spreadsheets and Microsoft Access tables that I was able to turn into CS files. So I imported all of those into QuickBase. getting those tweaked took a little while, but basically that first application, which in fact wasn't Blue Sky, it was one for our mental health clinic. I think it took a day or two to get it up and running.
Mm-hmm.
One day I imported all the data, and the second day I spent what's commonly referred to as massaging it, creating new fields for certain things. That was wonderful since I had all that data as I imported it. As you know, if anyone has ever done that out there, when it comes to a certain column, it'll ask you, well, this doesn't really match anything. Do you want to create a new field? And that's what the second day was. It's like, no, we'll put it in this field, or yes, create a new field. And it was ready to go. And on the third day, I had people, here's all your clients, the existing ones, start entering your contacts.
Great. And we're getting a lot of questions coming through, so I'll feed them through one by one here. But let me also address that if you asked a question and we weren't able to address it, we will be sending an email out to you with the answers to your questions you're asking.
Be glad
so
to
Eric,
do that.
One question comes through here. It says, did you have any challenges getting the external government agencies to use the system? And it also asks, were there any security obstacles with that?
Okay. No obstacles, really. Once we showed them what it could do, I mean, at that point, they were very used to emailing us, look, we have a new client, will you consider it? And they were having a mess on their email, too, in the fact that with that system, they come back and go, well, what are you doing with this client? I'm like, what client? We don't know anything about it. No, we emailed you. No, we never saw any email. Oh, let's find the email. Let's go through our sent items. Let's, whatever. They were doing the treasure hunt as much as we were. So when I came and showed them to them and say, look, you enter all the demographic information here, you upload the probation report here, you upload the psychiatrist's profile of this teenager over here, and it sends an email to all of us. You just entered something. No muss, no fuss. They loved it. Even to the point where right now in that Blue Sky program, we are running a randomized clinical trial here in New York to see if the particular therapy that we're doing is working. And that had to pass all kinds of muster to be a legitimate randomized trial. And we showed them QuickBase and we showed them the security that QuickBase allows you to do, and they had no problem. This will work just great.
Okay. Okay, great. Another question asks, how is government database information fed into your database? And they clarify, how have you been able to avoid dual data entry issues with your apps and the city databases? So is your application directly linked to the other databases, or how are you getting information?
No, it is not. In fact, we've talked to them about that, and like most IT people, and I myself am guilty of that, very protective of their data. There's usually another Freudian term for that, which I won't repeat here, but we wanted to get LinkedIn, which would eliminate certain data. So it would be like a therapist and just the data in one spot, and it's everywhere it has to be. We would love something like that, but they simply will not allow us to link directly into their data. What they have allowed us to do, which has helped, is most of the government databases are SQL-based, and we're allowed to pull some of those databases down and create reports, which then can be imported into QuickBase. But here's the problem. We go back to the issue that all the data that we get from those government databases is 3 days old. Mm-hmm. So what we have to do a lot of times, there is some double entry in that, say, the contact that we have put in QuickBase also has to be put in this government database. But we set the therapist up so it's 99% copying and pasting. We don't like to see anybody type anything twice.
Great. Eric, you mentioned you have a number of different apps to support your different programs. Are the various apps linked to each other? And if so, how are you using linking to further enhance data analysis and reporting?
They are not linked to each other in that they're separate clients going through different therapies. So generally, they're not linked. I am working on right now a dashboard to give just some overall big picture of how we're doing, um, with all the different apps. But basically, there has no real need to look at um, that big of a picture. The success of QuickBase is being able to look at all these little tiny details so that what's happening in the Blue Sky program is very different than what's happening, say, in a program we call Close to Home or another one that we have that's called Keys. There really is no overlap in that. It's different clients, different therapists. Um, so there hasn't been a need to link them all yet.
Okay. Great. Just a few more questions here.
Sure.
Are you using this solution in a mobile fashion with tablets or smartphones at all?
Yes, very much so. With this Blue Sky program, with all the evidence-based programs, it's not a question of the family coming in to see a therapist at their office at a New York Foundling building. All these therapeutic sessions occur in the family's homes. They are out in the field. All of our therapists have wireless laptops, Blackberries, smartphones, MiFi things. They are out in the field. They are never here. So we do use the QuickBase app for Blackberries, for iPhones, on the iPads. We don't issue iPads, but a few of the therapists do have them, and they have elected to enter it there. But we do give them the small netbooks with wireless capability, and of course, QuickBase being on the internet, they can get to it that way, which is great because they'll go see a family, have a therapeutic session, come out, and immediately take out their BlackBerry and put in there, enter a new contact. Was seen today, start this time, and this time. Some of them will put in where the session notes, sit there and type that all out on the BlackBerry. That personally would drive me nuts. But some of them do it, or at least they'll put in a couple of memory keywords so where they either get back home or get back to the office of some kind, they can flesh that out. But that was the great thing about QuickBase as well is that the data is real time. I mean, when you see that a contact occurred, that entry was made. We give people like 48 hours to get them in, but they're always in within 2 days. So most of the time, the therapists get that data, those contacts, in the same day they actually occurred. You can't get much more current than that.
Great. Okay, just a couple more here. Do you
Sure.
back up your data using a different system than QuickBase, or do you rely on the native QuickBase backup redundancy as your continuity plan?
We relied on the QuickBase native redundancy. We have not had a need to go with anything external at all.
Great. Have you developed a web interface or using QuickBase just as it is natively?
We're just using QuickBase just as it is natively. We've had no need to develop another web interface at all. I've seen that. I've had a lot of third-party QuickBase developers who tried to get me interested in that. And basically, at least for me, it was always like, okay, well, what will give me that I don't have now? And nothing has been real compelling. Everyone really likes QuickBase. Ironically, every once in a while we will sit down with we have about 200 therapists working for us, and we'll say, well, what can we do to make your life easier, make things all much more efficient? And the first response is, well, can you eliminate our need to put data into the government databases and just have us do QuickBase? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I wish we could do that. Unfortunately, the government agencies are the one paying the bills, so if they want data put in there, we got to put data in there.
Okay. What is the format of subscription reports when received by the recipients? And they asked, can it be done as a PDF?
Oh no, it just goes out. Well, the recipients all, at least the ones who have access to QuickBase, they just see a QuickBase report, and as you know, in an email, you can just go, "Well, click here to see this report in QuickBase." Um, for those, say, some of the other government or private agencies who want to see reports who don't have access to QuickBase, what I'll do is it's very simple. Once you create a report, you just 2 clicks and you've got an Excel spreadsheet, and that has to go. That's what goes out to them. Unfortunately, as you know, that's not automated. You can't really do it in a subscription basis. That's only for people with access to QuickBase. But certain agencies want certain reports on certain days, and it really takes very little time to generate the report. Click one button, it creates an Excel spreadsheet, and then from there just email it to the person who wants it.
Okay. Okay, and please feel free to submit just a few more questions. I think we will just take a minute or two left here. Eric, one person asks, picking up on your comment about implementing a dashboard to analyze across the different programs, how are you going forward in implementing that? And what stage are you in?
I've basically been talking right now with third-party vendors of QuickBase. While I'm familiar with databases, I'm not a hardcore QuickBase programmer, and as I like to say, developing a dashboard, quite honestly, is a little bit above my pay grade. I'm not a hardcore programmer, so doing that is a little daunting to me. So, as usual, when you need something done, you don't know how to do it, find somebody who does.
Great. Looks like we're sort of winding down on questions here. Eric, I just want to thank you for taking this time here to share your story, and I appreciate everyone here who logged in to hear your story as well. I hope this story showed you one possible way that QuickBase can be used. We hope you can see how QuickBase can be molded to pretty much any process, and here at QuickBase, we're here to help you with that. So, Eric, thank you very much for sharing your story.
Oh, my pleasure, Keith. And make sure if anybody has a question that they didn't get answered, feel free to forward it to me, and I'd be glad to answer them directly.
Great. And as we close here, before the weekend, we'll be emailing out this presentation deck and a recording of the webinar. We'll also post these materials on our Intuit QuickBase social channels, which are LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and SlideShare, so feel free to access them there. If you have a QuickBase story that you'd like to share and we could highlight your success with QuickBase as well, please visit our Facebook page and contact us that way. Thanks again for joining, and we really look forward to hearing about each of your success with QuickBase.